It's 7:30. I'd like to call the November 15th meeting of the Newbury Municipal Building Committee to order. This is Bob Connors, Chair of the Municipal Building Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Martha Taylor.
Yes.
John Keller.
Oh, we seem to have lost him.
Okay, Eric. Eric's fine. I think we've lost Eric. Dana Packer.
Here.
All right, well.
Hey, Eric's here. Sorry.
All right, thank you, Eric.
Okay,
right.
Eric, is that your phone number we're seeing?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
We'll change the schedule this morning, so I'll be on the phone in the car.
Okay, great.
All right, and John's coming back.
All right, well, I'll get going with the preamble. Good morning. This open meeting of the Newbury Municipal Building Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, extended until March 31st, 2023. Yes, we can, John. Thank you. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirements of open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials while this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. Please note this meeting is being recorded and the attendees are participating by video conference. All right, good morning, everybody. All right, if you turn to your revised meeting packet, tab 1 is the meeting minutes for the October 25th, 22 meeting. Why don't we quickly review those? Okay, any questions, comments, or corrections, team? Let me go around to the members. Eric, any questions or comments on those meetings? Minutes, excuse me.
No, I do not. No comments.
John, any questions or comments? Martha, any comments or questions?
I have a few, actually, if I may. One, I think it might be good to note in the beginning that the meeting is held via Zoom and all the votes are by roll call. On page 2 of 3, under item 8B, in the last line, it should be High Road instead of High Street. And under 14B, it's actually the Water Supply Protection Overlay District and not the water buffer.
Okay, all good points. John, if you can note those corrections, that'd be great. Dana, any further questions in your part?
No.
All right, do we have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as amended?
Yeah, go lie down. Lots.
For 10/25/22. Do we have a motion?
I'll motion that we accept the meeting minutes for 10/25/22.
Thank you, Dana. Do we have a second? I'll second the motion. Okay. All right. Any further questions? Roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Eric?
Aye.
John?
His phone hung up.
Okay. Martha?
Yeah.
Dana?
Yes. Aye.
And the chair votes aye. So we have a quorum and we have a majority, and hopefully John gets his phone back up and running. All right, if you turn to tab 2 of your packet. All right, it's today's agenda. And so let's go right to tab 3. Obviously, one of the most important parts of any construction project is establishing a construction schedule, identifying milestones and other points. Pardon my aggressiveness on this, but just my nature being a commercial project manager of pushing the envelope time-wise. So if you look at the draft schedule, it gives us a timeline through the end of next year. I think the real milestones are to, one, initiate schematic design, finalize floor plan, site plan, exterior elevations, and to complete documents for schematic design cost estimate, and then to review those same estimates with the town prior to Springtown meeting and the spring vote. So a couple of the dates that are critical. For a ballot question, we have to have all of the wording in on ballot questions by March 29th. The ballot question has to be approved by the select board and the debt exclusion amount on March 27th. Town meeting is April 25th. Debt exclusion vote would be May 9th, 2023. Now, those are pretty aggressive. We'll see how we do, but we might as well keep the bar high. So why don't I go around, stop there? Dana, what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree we should be more aggressive than not, just to keep this ball rolling, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. Some people in my group have been talking about as far as the presentation. I don't know if possibly we should talk about the presentation in executive session before we discuss it in public, or this is new territory for me, so I don't know if it wouldn't be a bad idea for we to somehow practice the presentation before we actually have the presentation. But I think the timeline is spot on.
Enter your meeting ID followed by pound.
Hey everyone, if you're not speaking, if you could mute your phones or your computer, that'd be appreciated. Yeah, Dana, you know what? Public meeting law doesn't allow a quorum of us to really do much unless it's beforehand. I mean, repeating what we did the last time.
Enter your participant ID followed by pound.
Hey,
otherwise,
John Keller, if you could mute your phone, there you go. Thank you.
I just muted him.
Oh, okay, great. It would seem to me, Dana, it's a very good question. What we've done in the past is we've ironed out, like we are now, budgets, floor plans, estimate of cost, schedule in this forum. And ultimately, when schematic design is completed and we have an estimate, the presentation is really quite simple. It's site plan showing the proposed building, the elevations, the floor plan, the budget, and the schedule, and we would backfill with having Jeff Shaw from Context being, part of that.
So that would all be done at an open select board meeting anyway?
Well, it would be done at our meeting, and then there'd be a presentation. We can only make a recommendation to the select board, and then from there, the select board decides if they want to put this on the Springtown meeting, on the warrant. I just wanted to keep in mind that the timelines that from a operational standpoint, the town has to comply with, if we want to try to get a decision by April and wrap this up, whether it's going to be a go forward project or we're going to take, we're going to wait, depending on the will of the town.
I like the timeline. I think the only other option would be if you don't think you can make it, would be we would have to have a special town meeting in the fall at some point in time.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to push the whole thing back a couple of years, so.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we were to miss, I mean, this is about as aggressive as you can get. We've got a lot of work to do in a relatively short period of time. But it's got to be tied into an election because of the override component of it. So it's probably either going to be spring or it's going to be fall. But again, I'd leave that up to the town administrator. But okay, Martha, on the schedule, what are your thoughts on this?
Excuse me. Well, I'm sorry, early morning frog. I think it's a good goal to work for, and hopefully we can make it. I think we should aim for it, and if we need to readjust as we go along, then we probably would be looking at a special town meeting.
Okay. All right, John Keller, any comments on this?
Well, whoa, I got an echo. Are you getting an echo from me?
Yes.
Yeah, we are, John.
Do you have two audio devices on, John, now?
Well, I couldn't get my computer to come on to hear you.
I think if you mute your computer and whatever you're going to use for an audio, John, that'd be the way to go. You could, or vice versa. Eric, any comments
Sure.
on schedule?
I do. How do we get out of the gate with the OPM and the designer selection process and get them on board to move the schedule forward? And have you also included any other items like third-party estimator in order to provide validation more quickly?
Well, I mean, we do have it. We do have on line 16 complete documents for schematic design cost estimate, whether that's a third party or it is through Context as a vendor. That's scheduled for February 24th. But on the other stuff, they're the next items on the agenda, Eric, and I can go into those. So I think we all agree this is about as aggressive a timeline as we could undertake at this point. But, all right, any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Tracy, any questions on your part? I see you're on the call with schedule.
Tracy texted me and she's having some issues with her audio, so I'm not sure she's going to be able to.
Okay. All right. So if we turn to tab 4, this is the proposal that Context has provided us, breaking down a menu selection of services. Okay, and if you look at that, now, again, remember, this is their proposal. There is a level of negotiation back and forth that will be undertaken by the committee and by procurement. It will be, you know what, Eric, let me ask you a question. Would you be comfortable working with Tracy on negotiating the final proposal with Context, even if it's only through the schematic design phase? Or do you want me to do it? Or the reality is it's something we can't do at a meeting because it's a contract negotiation. And it's something that because of quorums, it would have to be limited to just either one of us with Tracy. So what I'm going to suggest is why don't you two have a sidebar after the meeting or this week when time allows, and
Okay.
and go over this. I think at a minimum, getting through the phase 2 fee gets us to town hall, gets us cost estimates, and gets us to a presentation and a debt override vote to see what the feeling of the town is, whether they want to make an investment at this time in the project or not. And at that point, we could always look at the next step if it's a positive go from the town. But so let me go around the board. Dana, you've had a chance to see this. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, is there, are we going to ask anyone else for this, or is this it?
Well, if you recall at the last meeting, we town council has said because of the original request for qualifications that we can amend Context's contract without going back out to the RFQ, doing requests for qualifications,
Okay.
which would open it up, which adds about 4.5 months.
Yeah,
So you know, that's kind of where you're at.
I got it.
So it seems to me if we go through phase 2, and you know, which is going to be somewhere in the 150 range, we're going to find out if we have a viable project cost-wise, and what you know what the town feels as you know as a community on this.
Right. So
Bob, if I'm
I just have a question. The people here that know a little bit more about this than I do, does anybody see where any of this should be amended compared to what we were going to do last time?
Well, I think once the contract's Eric, let me just finish and I'll go back to you.
Yep.
Well, once the contract is finalized, it becomes a public document. During the negotiation, it won't be done at a public meeting, but so I would anticipate, Dana, that we're going to phase approvals. We're going to phase through phase. We're going to consider up to phase 2.
I got you.
And there's no reason to do phase 3, which is construction drawings, if town meeting and the town doesn't decide they want to invest in this project at this time.
Gotcha.
Eric, why don't you chime in at this point if you would like.
So Dana, in the profession, in terms of hiring consultants, one is always better hiring a consultant in which you've had an experience and working relationship with, because it's not an unknown or shotgun marriage of somebody new. If you had a super specialty, I don't know, we were doing a pool, then you might want to get somebody that has specific experience with that. But we've been with Context, and in terms of the contract and the work that they provided, we have a relationship where we can improve and be very clear about the expectations because we've been through the process with them. It's not only saving time, but we'll have a better relationship, I believe, with reworking with a consultant architect that we've worked with previously. And others can chime in. I think the proof is in the pie in the police station. So that's what I would add to this process.
Thank you, Eric. Martha, your comments?
No, I agree with what Eric just said. You know, we have a working relationship with Context. They're familiar. They're very familiar with us. They saw us very successfully through the police department project. And I think that if we were to go out and find another, you know, do a search for another architect, there's certainly the time involved with that, but also a whole learning curve for them to, you know, to understand our needs and our requirements. So I think, you know, I agree with what Eric just said.
Okay, thank you, Martha. John Keller, any comments? John, you're probably on mute.
I think his phone, I don't even think he's connected.
Well, his phone is looking like it's connected.
Yeah.
Well, mine is gray. If it's connected, it'd be green, I think.
Yeah, trials and tribulations of Zoom meetings.
I know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we have a plan going forward, team, which is Eric will work with Tracy, negotiate in good faith a fair price to get us through the phase 2. Then the will of the town will tell us whether we're going to go beyond that. So, all right, why don't we move on to tab 5. All right. So in tab 5, we have the original plans that Context had done, and again, this is pre-schematic design, and so the first set of plans you're going to look at are something I threw together quickly, and what it does is it gives you, when you walk in the main door of the town hall, and again, this is just from my empirical knowledge of going into other communities, pulling permits and doing business. When you walk in, your main operating area is permitting center, where you have all your different boards or committees or whatever that issue permits: Board of Health, Inspectional Services, Conservation, and it becomes more of a bullpen. So in the center, again, I use CAD Lite for idiots, so I apologize for trying to adapt what would be called hotel spacing or cubes in the center. So in this format, you'd have 4 offices at the back, which would be the individual department heads, and then you'd have 6 cubicles in the center. Gives you room right and left for files, plan tables, but you have a service counter at the front door. The one thing that I did was move the elevator from when you walk in to the right, which is kind of similar to the police station. To the left would be your town clerk or town treasurer. Now, this is conceptual. Where all the actual functions go it is going to be determined, through the process. But it just gives you an idea of having a permitting center with an open bullpen type of atmosphere on the first floor. If you go to the second level, typically meeting rooms have to be of a certain size to accommodate a fairly large crowd, but it's probably the most underutilized space on a daily basis. And in the institutional or commercial environment, having a retractable dividing wall is pretty commonplace, where you could divide the space. Let's say at a select board meeting, it'd be wide open. But if you had a planning board meeting or a Board of Health meeting and a ZBA meeting, and you didn't have any real actionable items, that room could be divided and used for 2 meetings simultaneously. In doing that, you do have to duplicate function as far as, audio, visual, AV, IT connections like that.
Bob, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yeah, go ahead, Dana.
Is the square footage? I like it. I like your first floor. I really like the first floor. Is the square footage the same as the original building?
Yeah, no, you know what? Don't even look at square footage, Dana. This is just kind of concept of layout.
Okay.
Okay, because it's
because the wings, the wings are an addition, aren't they? To what
yeah. Well, no, it's a potential layout of how you could do this.
Right.
So what? Just to give you an idea, to make it all fit, you could have 3 full-time offices at the back of this open permitting space, and you shrink everything down by 12 feet. Okay, you know what I'm saying? It's
I got you.
This is strictly conceptual, not square footage.
So the real answer is, right at the moment, there is no actual square footage. This is conception.
Yeah, this just gives you kind of layout of how do we make it all work?
Okay, go ahead. Press on. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. It's a good question, and it's easy to look at all these spaces and say, "My God, we got a ton of stuff," but in reality, it never really works out that way. So on the second level, you'd come out on the elevator, and you would have your public meeting room right to the right there, which would be, you could divide it, or at least it's something we could consider, so that you could have 2 additional meeting rooms rather than 1 big meeting room. And then again, how it lays out, your toilets would be by your elevator and stairway. And then you could have the other areas could be lined up where you have your finance, however operationally it sequences, but it's more, I guess the message I'm trying to convey is it's a concept that you can have your center of your building will be either your permitting center where 90% of your people go, or to your public meetings for either select board or lesser committees and boards where it's divided, you could divide it. All right. And so those are just some conceptual ideas I wanted to throw out there. Why don't I stop there? Dana, what are your thoughts?
I like it. I can just say, I remember JR had the comment of when we were talking about whether we were going to rebuild or tear down and build new or whatever. And JR actually mentioned that he liked that the center openness gives you that old town hall feeling when you have that open space for the public in the middle of the building.
Right.
I think people are gonna like that concept.
Okay, thank you. John Keller, what are your thoughts on that?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you're.
Oh, good. So I'm using my phone, so I'm audible?
Yep, you are. We can see you and we can hear you.
Okay, good. Well, I like that open concept plan with the offices around the perimeter. I think that's a great idea. A lot of places I go into are more like that than not nowadays. And look, I'll go back to the schedule. I concur with what Eric and Martha talked about. I tend to like an aggressive schedule, and so we know where we're going to be at when we bring it before the selectmen and stuff.
Okay, thank you, John. Anything else, John, before I move on to Eric? Okay. Eric, your initial thoughts.
Yeah, Bob, I like the concept in terms of having a welcoming center to town hall and having some kind of space that you arrive at and not just walking into a corridor. So I think that's good. And then it also allows for other coverage where some coverage for other departments may be if town hall is shifting or it's lunchtime, that there's always somebody available at a desk that can help guide somebody where they need to go.
Okay. Yeah, and again, we as we know, this is a moving target, but I think whatever direction we can start out with Jeff Shaw or context, it'll help the process move along a little more quickly. Martha, how about as someone that actually occupies this space, what are your thoughts?
Well, I will say that Tracy and I have been looking at it a little bit differently because we don't quite function in that way. If anybody is going to be front and center, it really should be the town clerk as opposed to the permitting, because they're the ones who get all of the traffic.
Okay.
If you look at the plan that follows what Bob had done, our thoughts were a little bit different. That you have, a large lobby that you walk into with all the offices. The town clerk, the assessors, the treasurer, collector, and inspectional services around that, because each one of those people has one admin, and so those admins are the ones who really get the traffic. We don't, we don't have a large permitting center. So again, if we were to look at that concept with something in the middle, it would really probably be more likely to be the town clerk's function because all of the traffic goes there. But the idea of, having a large lobby space that people come into and can, immediately go to the window or the person where they're going to be transacting business is certainly, I think a good way to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think keeping that in mind, the way I laid this out is the town clerk is directly to the left with a service window as you walk in the front door. And I plugged in town treasurer, town clerk, assessor, vault. I mean, again, those can all change. But certainly I put a high priority on the town clerk because honestly, it's either the town clerk or the inspectors that you're going to 90% of the time. So, all right, well, why don't we do this? Let's move on to the next set of plans are what Tracy and it's basically the context schematic that Tracy and Martha had been basically reorganizing and sequencing for how it should flow. So if you're reading the notes, all service windows should face lobby, mechanical electric sprinkler moved to the attic, building size for 30 years, first floor room, copy room added, IT moved to second floor. So these are all valuable tidbits of information that we get to share with the architect. And that'll help expedite the process. Martha, do you want to walk through your plan here?
Sure. It's a little bit what I was just describing, but if you come into the main entry over on the left, you've got a large lobby space, and there's a window for each of the 4 functions that people go to most frequently. So you've got the town clerk and assistant town clerk on the left when you come in, and the assessor's clerk on the right. And then inspectional services, and we have one admin that serves all of inspectional services. So one function, one space for that would be sufficient. Then we've suggested behind that, so on the bottom of the page, we do have some part-time inspectional people, the parking clerk, the shellfish constable, who could share an open office area, maybe with 3 workstations, because they're not all here full time. So they could essentially, bring their laptops in or do whatever they needed to do in that open office area. And then up towards the top of the plan, you've got the assistant treasurer, who's the person who receives all the bill payments. So there's a fair amount of traffic there too, because it's the car excise payments as well as the property tax bills. And then the elevator straight ahead, some back of the house functions, a vault, copy mail room, break room, conference room, and then in the back, private offices for the conservation agent, the building commissioner, me, assistant planner, and then health inspector and the public health director. And then upstairs really is the sort of the finance and administrative functions. So we've got the town administrator's suite, which includes an office for the select board, which is something that's been expressed quite frequently. It would be nice for the select board members to have, an individual office to come in if one of them wanted to be here. And then accounting and DPW, the hearing room in the middle. So if you come off the elevator, it's directly ahead of you. And then the PEG and IT in the back of the building, and more sort of back of house functions like the break room and files and print copy on the second floor in the middle block. So I think conceptually the idea would be similar in that you're walking into a large lobby space, which would be sort of like our old town hall that has the main functions that you need to go to around it. So that's the synopsis.
Okay. John Keller, any comments?
Oops.
All right, Eric, any comments?
I think the concepts are good. I like how Martha explained the 4 divisions, and I guess it does come down, Bob, to how many people are actually at the counter, and if there can be some synergies there.
Yeah, no, I think that having all this information available to process at the context level is just invaluable. I mean, this is hybrid programming at this level. Anything else, Eric?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Dana, any comments?
Well, Martha, you didn't give yourself a corner office.
No,
You stuck yourself in the middle there. That's yeah, like, hey, I've never worked in the building before. I have gone, I obviously I'm in there probably more than a lot of residents are in there. The current one we have right now, that is. And so as far as needs and wants and that kind of stuff, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I when looking at Bob's original, his new plan up top there, I did understand the concept of people aren't going to be walking in the main door and then going straight into the permitting center. You're going to have glass and like countertop right there in front of you. Is that correct, Bob? Is that?
Yeah. Every public access, the way you're going to go, whether it's clerk, treasurer, or permitting, or whoever, would have a service counter with glass or a counter screen that you would roll down at night to secure it. You wouldn't be walking into an open area. The lobby would be secured to a point.
Correct. So I guess my point is both the designs, one being you've got separate rooms and separate windows for those, the main players here. And on the first design, the main players have got their spaces in the permitting center, and they would be coming up to the counter as needed based on what the needs were going to be. Just a side note, like property taxes and excise taxes, I don't pay them in the building at all anymore. I do the whole thing online. So,
yep.
Yep.
That was my dog.
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of people still do come in. They like, they like that contact. They like being able to hand their check over the counter.
Oh, I'm sure of it. Yeah. Hey, what is it? We got more than half of us are over 65. So I understand that.
We need stuff to do, Dana. We got to have something to do some days before we go for coffee. But
I just get this little message saying, you just paid your $1,800 property tax bill, and I'm like, great.
Nice.
Anyway,
I think the big thing to take away here, guys, is that Martha has prioritized some of the heavy traffic areas. We've introduced some concepts of open, as an alternative. We'll just blend this together into something that we reach a consensus on, I think, is it's the big thing. But all right, any further comments on this before we move on to the next item? All right. If we turn to tab 6, it's the estimate of probable cost. So the only change on this at this time is where we now have a proposal in writing from Context on design, engineering, soft cost. I've made an adjustment on that to not mirroring the proposal, but where I think it may land. And what that does is it brings the budget up, brings that line item up to $917,500. Project total is 10,000. We only wish. $10,785,275. You know, as again, that's a moving target. This is just an inventory of numbers right now, but that was the only change because that was really the only hard proposal we've had come in, and I've set the bar for Eric and Tracy to negotiate a much better deal than what's being presented. But Dana, any comments on that?
No.
Martha, how about yourself?
No, not at this point.
John Keller.
I don't have any either.
And Eric, we're giving you marching orders with some target numbers.
Yep. Loud and clear.
Okay. All right. Nothing else. Let's go to tab 7. And tab 7 is the revised programming comparisons. So, team, if you recall, the original programming was part of the context package at the last meeting packet. And what I did was ask Martha and Tracy to review that to see if there are any. We had some additions on the civilian part of the police, being shellfish, animal control, and so they reviewed the actual space projections, basically a seat for every function, and they've updated it. And so you have the original one is in the back of it, but this was the updated one that Tracy and Martha had done. So I guess the big points would be this. On the first floor, the original square footage was 3392. With the added stations that are required or anticipated, it's 3,650. So it's a net square footage gain of 258 square feet on the first floor. On the second floor, the initial square footage was 3,422 square feet, and the anticipated square footage is 3,800 square feet. Now that's a net gain of 378 square feet on the second floor. In reality, my initial estimate, excuse me, I had used a number of 10,400 square feet in anticipating some of these increases, and that's what our budget was on. The initial programming was set at 10,000 square feet. So the actual net increase on budget is going to be about 236 square feet. 10,636 versus 10,400. Why don't I stop there? Martha, why don't you just bring us up to speed on the adjustments that you and Tracy have anticipated?
Sure. So just to, excuse me, clarify, excuse me again, what this reflects, the column that says 12 Kent Way, that's the net square footage of the offices that we have right now, some of which are fine, some of which are too small, really for the functions that are going on. So the column on the right that says New Town Hall net square feet, we just went through and evaluated each of those spaces, tried to standardize on some kind of a standard office size for most functions at about 140 square feet. There are a few that deviate outside of that, but and we did add, tried to make sure that we've got the appropriate support spaces on each floor. We did add the workstations. If you go down, it says open office area. And there was 0 currently in our space, and we put in 400 to account for 3 workstations to accommodate our gas and electric inspectors, shellfish constable, animal control officer, and the parking clerk. Those are the functions that Bob mentioned would be coming over from the police station. There, you'll see some other things in the left-hand column that are zeros right now, and these are support spaces that we sorely need. Down at the bottom, that's the vault, some conference rooms, kitchen and break room, and similarly on the, let's see, a couple of other changes. Going back up, building commissioner and conservation agent there in a shared office right now at 226 square feet. So we've suggested breaking those out into 2 separate offices because they really don't need to be together. So, on the second floor, you'll see in the left-hand column there are some zeros. Those are functions that we don't have right now that we do need. One is a conference room and an office for select board members to use. Additional staff person, the PEG Studios in there. We don't have that right now. DBW director and admin is added, and then some additional file storage. So I think that's it, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, I thank you, Martha. I think what shouldn't be overlooked are the notes that you've added for the rationale behind the recommendations, the notes that you've added, and additional notes, which were lacking on the original space projections. I think it provides great detail and insight, for context to pull this all together in schematic design for us. All right, John Keller, any questions?
Well, I like that they took the time to make sure everybody has their own space where it allows for the 30-year plan where it may have extra people coming on board and sharing spaces in the future. So I think it's been well thought out by Tracy and Martha.
Oh, I agree. Eric, how about yourself? Any comments?
No comments at this time. I think Martha went through it quite well. And yes, any comments as to the use of the room to help describe it to people is excellent. And certainly the understanding that there are some spaces that we don't currently have that we do need, or do have and don't need, or are being combined, certainly helps to tell the whole story and not just give somebody a number.
Thank you, Eric. Eric, when you're negotiating with Jeff Shaw, make sure that you can convey that our in-house attorney is doing half of his work, and we don't want to pay twice for the same work. Martha is. I have to tell you, I sit in on project meetings at the academic level, and you never ever get this level of detail. This is usually what percolates up from the architect of record after about 12 months of programming interviews. But excellent work, Martha. Very, very, very helpful, and it's information like this that'll give us a fighting chance to achieve our schedule. Dana, any questions?
A couple questions. Martha, there's some things that aren't we regionalizing some positions, like the dog officer, for example?
I don't know that that's been determined yet. Tracy could answer that question better than I know. She's still having issues with audio, although she might text me on that.
Because she has mentioned that to me a couple of times, and I just bring that out because we are wanting to look at like a 25 or a 30-year plan down the road, and I'm just wondering if there would be any. And that one I think is probably going to happen, and I'm curious about if there's any other sections that may be regionalized where that space. I mean, I hate to say this because I'm a guy, right? I got a lot of crap, and you can never say you don't have enough space. So I understand that concept, but like for example, the regionalized positions that we might see coming up in the future may not need their own space. So that's just thinking outside the box. The other comment would be like the shellfish coming over from the police department, and then the DPW. Is the DPW in the current building now, or are they over on High Road?
No, he's over on High Road. His admin is actually in the building, but he himself over on High Road. And, there's certainly benefits of having him as a director of his department have space in the building. Just if I may, going back to the comment about the ACO and the shellfish constable, as I noted, we've got 3 workstations basically allocated for 6 people. So, the intention is not that person, the shellfish constable or the ACO, would have a permanent office space, but it would be a workstation that he or she could come to work. And we're looking at 3 stations between, potentially 5 or 6 people.
Gotcha.
I did get a text from Tracy saying we're in preliminary discussions exploring ACO regionalization.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think what you're going to see in this process, Dana, too, is there's a gravitation from private offices to shared offices or workstations. The day where everyone has their own private office and they're only there an hour a day is, economically is just not viable, any longer. So that's kind of the struggle that we'll go through. But I think Martha and Tracy have done a very good job of identifying potential opportunities for us. All right. Do we have any other questions? That the next couple of pages in that tab were the original, space projections compared to existing. All right. If we don't have anything else there, let's just see. Okay. So what I wanted to discuss, team, is as we're negotiating with context on the next phase of documents, I think it would be prudent to request that we go and start doing geotechnical borings be undertaken, but located by context in potential locations where a building could be built. Many times it's better to get this done very early, even prior to schematic design, so that you know exactly what you're up against. My sense is we're going to have way different soil conditions at High Road than we did on 7 Morgan. And the other thing too, so it'd be pretty traditional. Start doing geotechnical borings now. Review if we have an existing 21E site assessment. I have a recollection that we've already done it. I just don't know if it was site-wide from Morgan Ave to High Road. But that would be my suggestion, that we make a recommendation to procurement to consider securing quotes for geotechnical borings in conjunction with locations established by context, and to review 21E site assessment. Just to keep the ball rolling and make sure we don't have any glitches at 25 High Road. I'm going to stop there. John Keller, what are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree with this. I think it's the most important piece to do before you get too far along, and it helps certainly with the design and maybe the final selection of the site. Okay,
thank you, Eric. What are your comments? Any thoughts on this?
It's step one. It's always step one. Okay. I'm in agreement.
Great, Martha. Any comments?
No, I agree. Also, we should get that going.
Thank you, Dana. Any comments?
No.
Okay. All right, team. It doesn't require a vote. I think it's just a recommendation by the committee that procurement initiate the process to secure geotechnical borings. And Martha, if we do not have an existing 21E site assessment, we probably only need a phase 1, and it may already exist. If we could verify that, I think that would be quite helpful.
Yeah, I'll look into that.
Okay. Now, I want to circle back on the OPM protocol and timeline. I did have a chat with John Lemieux from Vertex. And one thing I had talked to John about was the last clerk of the works that we had was a guy by the name of Doug Gordon. And I found Doug to be probably one of the sharpest OPMs. His level of qualifications far exceeded our projects. His projects in the past are in the hundreds of millions of dollars at federal, public, and private levels. And I was talking to John about the possibility that if Doug Gordon was available, having him serve as a combined role as clerk of the works and as project manager. This project isn't as complex as a police station where you have detention, levels of security, and permitting beyond just local inspectional services, and 9/11, changeover or swap over, whatever you want to call it. So that's ongoing. I plan to follow up with John on that, and it's something we do have to secure an OPM. Really prior to construction drawings. We're still kind of in the pre-schematic stage, but it's the same thing. Excuse me. As the original RFQs were sent out for the police station, their contract could be amended and negotiated to include this without going back out to an RFQ process and again losing 4.5 months of time. But I'm going to stop there and let's just circle around. Dana, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't have any. I do have something that this is totally irrelevant to what you're talking about, but I had the fire station, Mr. Zeeler in particular, I think at some point in time, if this is non-related, would like to have us do like a walkthrough with them because they're concerned about, egress and access and I know this may be way down the road, traffic control, that kind of stuff, and how that's going to affect their operation. So they would like to speak to us about that. I don't know if that's something we should put on a different agenda for a later day, but it just happened to pop into my head that he asked me about that.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good point. It's probably premature at this stage. I think schematic design, basically it's going to give us a building location, building
Right.
size, and then the site plan showing parking and egress and exits. It seems to me, Dana, that it kind of makes sense. You're going to enter Town Hall from Morgan Ave, but exit on High Road. So you're going to have kind of a one-way directional. And I think the big thing is incorporating the rear access at the fire station. They have a rear garage door there.
Right, that was one of the main things he's concerned about.
Yeah, no, that's on our radar screen, and you know what? Actually,
well, I'm bringing it up in this forum.
Yeah, no,
this is a public forum, and I want him to know that we're thinking about it.
Yep. No, I think it's a very good point. And well, when we get to the site plan review on that, something tells me the planning board, having Martha Taylor on the committee, is ultimately going to be approving site plan review. So we'll make sure we'll keep that on the front burner, though. It's a good thought. John Keller, any comments?
Nope, not at this time.
Okay, Eric, any comments?
No, I agree. It's all about personnel with the staffing, and that's part of going back to him and improving upon the relationship that we had last time. So all good.
Great, thank you, Martha. Any comments?
No, I would just second what Eric just said.
Okay. All right, team. Why don't we do a final wrap up before we don't have any other communications than what's been discussed. Why don't we just have a final comment before I open this up to citizen comments? Martha, any any remarks you want to add to the discussion today?
Um,
Excuse me.
No, I don't think so. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay, John Keller, any comments?
No, the only thing I say is I like the schedule, and let's keep pushing hard to get to where we need to on this concept.
Okay, Dana, any comments?
No.
Thank you. And Eric, any comments?
No further comments, thanks.
Okay, team, we're going to open this up to citizens' comments. What we're going to do is it's going to be limited to 3 minutes. We'll make sure we get to everybody that would like to speak. All I would ask is give us your best 3 minutes. If it's not on the agenda, we can't really discuss it, but we can make notations and address it at a later meeting if it's important. So why don't we start? Jack Rabicki, you're the first one we're going to start with. How's that?
Thank you, Bob. I enjoy watching and witnessing. I ask of the demo. Where does the demolition that you're proposing that'll be proposed to let this building take place there? How's that being carried?
It's just carried in the construction cost, Jack. It's covered in the square footage cost as all inclusive as is site work and all that. And I think the big thing you have to remember, budget numbers, spreadsheets are really what you want to make them. As you heard me say numerous times today, it will change as more information becomes available. And you're not going to have any type of demo until the will of the town is determined on in the spring, and whether we're going to have funding to do anything at all.
10-4, I agree. It's just as part of the process, of course, that would have to take place to make that schematic move. The other thing I concur with Mr. Packer on is that not considering how the coming fire station impact build would take place would be, I think, irresponsible on our part, especially the nature of the entirety of that build. I understand what your charge is as the municipal building committee, but the extension of factoring in the fire department and then the coming fire department needs, which have been discussed at the executive level as next coming as a taxpayer's concern, I think should be very much, as Dana brings up, part of this discussion entirely.
Yeah, no, and the site plan review does, we'll address that, and that, again, that's at the planning board level too. But good points, Jack. Both good points.
Thank you very much, Bob. Appreciate it. Thank you.
you.
Thank you all for your time, always.
All right, Jim Moran. I see Jim. Good morning, Jim. You're on mute, Jim, if you have a...
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jim.
Bob, I sent it to you fellas by email, a bunch of comments a week or so ago. Here's my first issue is the packets that you're reviewing. In the future, can we make those as an attachment to the agenda so those who are tuning in or want to read them later can see what the current status is?
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. They're public record. Excuse me, Jim. They're all public record. What the process, Jim, is on Thursdays we finalize the agenda and get it posted, and I send out a draft meeting packet because there's always some additional information that we're scrambling to include and update, which typically goes out on Monday. But there's no problem at all. Jim, if you want, I can just send them to you by email as well.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Your space needs, I was very encouraged to listening to your discussions on that. You're well into those. I don't know that I have to interject anything. I reduced to writing my thoughts. It seems like Martha and Tracy are looking at that pretty closely.
Yeah, no, Jim, your experience, Jim, you know how far along we are at such an early stage.
Yes. My comment on the budget, the $640 a square foot, do we still think that's a realistic number today? And what's that based on? Is Context give us some feedback on that?
Yeah, that number came from Context as the last round of town halls that came out. I mean, it takes my breath away because that's the same cost we spent on a police station, which is a far more complex build. But
Does that reflect the cost of maybe a year from now and when you go out to bids?
no, it doesn't, Jim. And I actually, in the budget, we carry an escalation of 4%. But I think there is looking over the horizon consensus that pricing will stabilize as supply chain solves, the economy slows down. So whether we'll have pricing reduction, what we may not have is any price escalation. But we wanted to be aggressive at this point, Jim, for the obvious.
The number 640 doesn't really surprise me based on what context has given us in the past. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if a year from now it's over 700.
It's, you know what, I'm seeing it at the institutional level, at my level within our business. Everyone has bitten the bullet that had to get projects done at these ridiculous costs, but everyone's taking a second look, and then it's just doing what's absolutely necessary. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting as rates go up and the recession continues. But
yep, a difficult task at hand for sure. The schedule looks like you've got a great schedule ahead. I made a few other comments under my general comments, but those are in writing, and you collectively can all look at those comments, and I'm sure if you stay with open minds, things get better and better.
Yeah, you know what, Jim, as you know, this is it's an open process. We meet in public. We don't hold public hearings for the obvious. It's just not required. But at this stage of the process, I value input on the pre-schematic design. So, all right, Jim, thank you. I'm going to move on. Tony Matthews. Jim, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Tony, any comments you'd like to make? Okay.
Tony's on mute also, I guess, huh?
All right, Tony.
Tony was muted.
Okay, Tony, if you have any comments, you're on mute. All right, I think Jim and Jack have done a great job in covering some broad brush issues. All right, so moving on, next meeting date. Team, we've got the holidays upon us with Christmas and New Year's. I'm going to suggest, just to keep some momentum, that we consider meeting on Tuesday, December 13th. And by that time, we should be able to have some feedback from Eric and Tracy on context. And we should know whether or not we have an existing 21E site assessment and where we're at on geotechnical borings, I think, which are all good things. So why don't we check our calendars? It'd be December 13th, 2022. Dana, how does that work for you?
I'm good.
I mean, you know, you're a gentleman farmer now from Byfield, so you've got all the time in the world, right?
Yeah, no, I'm good with that.
Okay, thanks, Dana. Martha, how does that work for you?
I think that's fine.
Okay. John Keller, does that work for you?
That works fine for me.
Eric, how about yourself? Does December 13th work for you?
Yeah, I have a big all-day meeting scheduled. I may have a half hour for that meeting with a limit on it.
Yeah, I think Eric, at the next meeting, you know, my milestones are where we are in geotechnical, where we are with you know, with the negotiation on phase 2 drawings for schematic design, and I hope to have an answer on what we're going to do with the OPM and having a site assessment either ordered or in process or reviewing an existing document.
Great.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Does anyone have anything else before I consider a motion to adjourn? All right. Hearing no further comments, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion that we adjourn.
All right. We have a second. All
I'll
those in favor, roll call vote. John Keller, Eric
Yes.
Svan, Bob Connors, yes. Martha Taylor, and
Yes.
Dana Packer.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everyone.